OMG, hello, my friends. Here we are. And this is going to be an interesting episode because, speaking for myself, being organized when it comes to paper has always been an issue. In fact, my husband and I joke that we keep our house clean, it's neat, we don't have like stuff everywhere, we're kind of minimal, except the paper. So it has been for 20 some years an issue for us, and maybe it's an issue for you. And in fact, as I'm recording this, I am looking across the room and seeing stacks of files from my mom's house for things I'm supposed to be doing for her. So I have with me C.Lee, who is a certified professional organizer. There are fewer than 350 certified professional organizers worldwide, and she uses her advice and instruction to transform living spaces and personal lives of thousands of people. So that sounds amazing. Right now, her mission is bringing order to cluttered desks and overwhelmed minds with her signature course, The Paper Cleanse, and she'll mention that, I'm sure. And she lives near me just outside of DC. And this is my favorite part, C.Lee, considers herself indoorsy.
Yes, we were just talking about that.
Yes, indoorsy. I love it. Well, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Earl. I'm so excited to be here. And,
Yes,
this is one of my favorite topics because it is something that plagues us all, or most of us
really.
at least. Yeah.
Yes. I I mean truly, I'm not even making that up for this podcast episode at all. Paper has been always a thing. So, we're going to solve it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, let's start with your story to a certain extent. My listeners know I always do this, but I always find that we create things in our lives to really solve our own problems or because they have meaning to us. So, how did you end up working as an organizer? And then, especially with this focus on dealing with paper?
Yeah. No. So I actually have a BFA in costume and set design. So this is not a natural path, but I realized that, I wasn't a brilliant costume designer, but I could get things done on time and on budget. Why? Because I was organized.
Mhm.
Then we went and lived in England. My husband got his PhD and taught at Cambridge University. And I worked in a high end retail boutique, and we busted out sales numbers. Am I an amazing salesperson? No. I was organized, right? I could
Mhm.
get the inventory done and focus on clients and do client follow up. Um, and so when we moved back to America and my daughter went to kindergarten, I was finding like, wow, what should I do with my life? What should I be now that, I don't want to be a stay at home mom. I want to do something. And I realized the things, the one thread that had made me successful as a costume designer or a retail manager or a personal assistant was that I was organized. And I
Mhm.
thought, wow. And this was in 2003, right? So it was just when, we lived near DC. I'd go to a dinner party with my husband, who's a lawyer, like every other person in DC. And I'd say, oh, I'm an organizer. And they'd be like, oh, for which labor union? I'm
Oh
like,
gosh.
no, no, I do closets and pantries. Oh, and then the wives would be like, what do you do? Right.
What?
So it was just when you were starting to realize that this was actually could be a way to live. And what I also realized is that it wasn't just that I was organized, it's that I could teach others how to
Mhm.
be organized. And the real success was when I'd do the decluttering, set up a system, and people would be fine. Like they'd graduate. I wouldn't hear from them again. And then I knew that what I set up for them was super successful.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I came to do it. Plus, it was something I could do as my own business around my daughter's, school hours. My husband was traveling crazy hours. So a real kind of full-time job didn't make sense. So I could work between 9 and 3 school hours or,
Mhm.
take the day off and go volunteer as a chaperone for the zoo. So it was a good, flexible concept as well. And it served me well. And that was when my daughter started kindergarten in 2003. And so here
Wow,
we are,
21 years.
over 20 years later. So I've got a lot of experience.
Excellent, excellent. And what really stuck out to me there is this idea of being able to teach people to do it themselves. Because, I mean, that's my first love is teaching. That's why we're here, honestly. And it's not something that everybody knows how to do. So kudos to you that you figured out how to do that. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So, speaking of teaching people to get better at this, t- why do we even end up in this position where we're overwhelmed
Right,
by paper?
right.
How
I
does
know.
this happen?
I know. So I do believe, Cheryl, that there's a real divide. So I have a 26-year-old. She has a big job. She's director of product for a ed tech nonprofit. She doesn't even own a printer, right? She is a digital native. I am a digital dinosaur. And that I think is really, I still love paper. Like I've got my notes here. I, it's a tangible thing. And that's how we grew up, because we grew up before the digital age,
Yeah.
when if you needed information, you got out your almanac or your dictionary or the sources, right? So that's kind of part of it. Also, um, I'm just going to get this. There are 300 pieces of junk mail per year per person currently in America. 100 million trees are cut down each year for junk mail. So even if you don't have a printer, if you receive mail, then you may be inundated with it. And I do think that some of us just we want to read a real book. We want to highlight our notes. We still like a real newspaper occasionally. So I think that that's why we're still in this kind of in between. All of us have one foot in paper still and then one foot in digital.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like, where did I see that? Was it online? Was it,
Yes.
it's like there's so much information coming at us. So that's why I think we still have a problem with paper.
And you know what? It's a good point. If we even say just a problem with information coming at us, this, I fully agree. This, I don't know where I saw that thing as a problem.
Right.
Or I know she sent me the message, but where the heck was it? Instagram, Facebook message, text, email? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's just, it used to be so much simpler. And
Yeah.
that's why I think we're really feeling this overwhelm and overload. And it manifests itself, like you refer to your mom's papers, right? You may
Mm-hmm.
not have those files for home repair, but your mom does.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes, and it's funny that as we were, well, not we, as I was sitting here getting ready for this episode, I really didn't even put that together. And that probably deserves a whole nother episode, to be honest, helping our aging parents.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I went to her house and I brought home all these files because I need to work on her finances for her. And they're sitting there cluttering up my house. So yeah, good point. That's a whole nother set of paper.
And truly, actually, it's funny that you should say that, because one of the results that a few of my students have had, one of my students, exactly, she had papers everywhere. Older woman, retired single woman. And so these were the financial papers. And she was overwhelmed, and she needed to, well, she hadn't retired. She needed to gather up her financial information to take it to a financial advisor. So she
Mhm.
had to organize the papers first. She didn't even know where to find the information, because she was getting paper statements and things. And after she worked with me, she was able to do that. She took her sheath of papers to her financial guy, and he's like, "You can retire tomorrow and be
Ah,
absolutely." And it was because she had to get the papers together before she could go there, right? That was
yeah.
A to B. So I think it's wonderful that you're helping your mom in that way.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that you might actually, not only will your house be a bit neater and your brain maybe be a bit neater, but you might get some good news out of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I know that those of us listening who have this paper issue are fully tracking what you're talking about,
Mhm.
absolutely recognizing that we have piles and piles and it's hard to keep track of. But so let's not, but let's start with baby steps. If somebody
Right.
wants to tackle this problem, is there a way that you could advise that we would even just get started with, simple steps?
Absolutely. So I have kind of some intangible ideas, right? And the first is that good and done is better than perfect and none. And I see
Mm,
this over and over again. People don't get started because they want it to be perfect and they don't even know what perfect looks like. So it's just better to avoid that, right? So one of the things I'm going to say is, it doesn't have to be A plus work. I really encourage B minus work
yes.
because slow progress is still progress and any progress is better than nothing. So that's kind of like the intangible. The other thing is you need to trust yourself, right? So Barbara Hemphill is a renowned organizer. She's trademarked the phrase, clutter is nothing more than postponed decisions. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what it is, right? Anything that's clutter, you haven't decided if you're keeping it, and if you're keeping it, where it goes. So until you can start making those decisions, but people don't trust themselves. Oh, what if I need it? Oh,
Yes.
and so one of the things I encourage people to do is really trust themselves and ask themselves questions. Okay, so what if you threw that piece of paper away? Could you find that information someplace else?
Mm,
You know, is it going to be valid? Is it, those types of ideas. So trusting yourself. And of course, you need to learn which questions to ask yourself, but
right.
trusting that you can make decisions. Recently, I had a Q&A with my members, and I said to them, who had all gone through my course, I'm like, is there any paper, here we are a year later, because we'd had like a little graduation, that you threw away that you regret throwing away? And of the dozen or more people on the Zoom call, not one of them could think of one piece of paper that they regretted throwing away. So,
Wow.
so because they did it in a purposeful, logical way that they could trust the decisions they made. So
Yeah.
then tangible ways, right? Truly, if you want to do this, like clear your desk off, clean it completely, like get out the wet wipes. I can't tell you. I had a student, she cleared her desk off. She did my method. She found not one pair of readers, but she found 10 pairs of readers. She said, she posted a picture of all 10 of them lined up, buried in the paper. And she's
Oh
like, well,
my
no wonder I can't ever find any, if I find a pair. She just kept buying them at the dollar store, right? So so clean your desk off completely. Give yourself a fresh start. Give yourself space to work, right?
yeah.
And create some type of collection container, some place that you can collect those papers until you can deal with them, right? It's
Hmm.
like that's a hangout spot until they find a home. Um, make sure you have a good chair. Make sure you have good lighting, right? Without those things, it's so hard. You are going to want to sit at your desk to sort and work
Yeah.
because your chair is uncomfortable. And this kind of comes from COVID times. People just had to like make it work, right? But
Yes.
then they realized when they were at their dining room table, they had a lot of space, they had a big window, they had good light, and maybe that was what they were lacking the whole time. So, kind of
Mm.
those tangible things can really make a difference in setting up your environment to be to work for you instead of against you.
That's a great point because otherwise, I think we sort of maybe stick ourselves in a corner like it's a dungeon or something, right? And
Oh
that's
my
not
gosh, Cheryl,
what you
I
want.
can't tell you how many people, I'm like, no, you need to find, even if it's just you use your kitchen table and you have a little rolling cart that holds everything so you can clear it off for dinner. If you're good, if you want to be on the main level where there's light and warmth, don't send yourself to the basement because you won't be productive. So yeah, that's a huge issue. Absolutely. So those are just a couple of things just to get yourself started.
Yeah.
Let yourself do B minus work and give yourself a fresh start.
Yeah, I'm glad you said B minus work because I am a huge, huge fan of that principle in general. We stop ourselves in life from doing so many things because we want to do it. And I'm definitely an offender in this area because we
Yeah.
want to do it perfectly. So I'm glad you said that too. Absolutely. Yeah. So, well, let's take it further than baby steps then, because
Okay.
you have created a method that you call the karma method of paper management. So, tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that.
So earlier, like, well, how did you fall into specializing in paper? And I didn't. It's just that that was the need. I would go to everyone's homes and they're like, oh, can you do my pantry? Oh, and then my paper. I mean, it's especially in the early 2000s
Yeah.
before we became much more digital. Every single person, papers coming in from school, papers coming in from work, papers coming in from conferences. And so and then there's the paper you pay for, magazines and newspapers, right? And then your mom sends you something. And so, so I'd rather stay in a kitchen or a pantry because tangible items, you can get a lot more big results in a shorter time with tangible items. Paper can take forever because if you're doing it right, you really need to look at every piece of paper,
Right.
and that's a lot of mental effort and decision making. But I realized early on that I needed, you know, I moved to America from England and we lived in a fellow's flat. We didn't have a car. I had national health insurance. I had very few papers. I came to America and oh my gosh, health insurance, buying a house, buying a car, all, chimney sweeps, landscaping, babysitters. I was inundated. I was inundated. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm an organized person. This was before I even started my business and I can't manage this. So I came up with a really easy system for myself. And then when I became an organizer, I realized, oh, well, let me tell you what I do. I don't know if it's going to work for you. And person after person was like, yeah, that worked. That really worked. So
Love it.
it's the karma of paper management, and it stands for KARMA. And the first K is crud. And I know I spelled it incorrectly, but I had to for my acronym because
I mean, what's more important? Yeah.
every organizer loves an acronym. So the crud is the first thing. You need to make those decisions on what you're going to keep. The less you keep, the less you have to manage, right?
Mm.
So really, that means there's really only 4 categories of paper. And all papers fall into one of these categories. They can move between categories, but it's A is action
Mhm.
items or active projects. R is reference material. And some people think about that as filing, but I want you to think about it as what you would actually reference.
Okay.
M is memorabilia. Paper based memorabilia is huge. And the final A is archive. And those are kind of our like cover our ass kind of papers, right?
Hmm.
And what kind of sets my system apart from other people, lots of people have action or, fat file act toss or things, is that I really acknowledge that the memorabilia is a huge part of our paper clutter. And people don't know what to do with it. And once they figure that out, because those are our heart-based papers, right? Like,
Yes.
the letter to Santa that you want to hold on to, or kids' drawings, or for me, when a student sends me a wonderful note telling me how I changed their life, those are heart-based papers, right? Those give us a lot of pleasure and joy. But we need to figure out what to do with them and not just pile them up and ignore them for months at a time.
Yes.
So that's what karma stands for. And like I said, it worked for the clients I would go to in their own homes. And then now I'm teaching it as an online course. So it kind of really found me. I didn't look for it, but it's been a really useful method that really simplifies things and resonates with people so that they can do it themselves. Um,
Yes.
that's what's really powerful. Clients, students will be like, oh my gosh, C.Lee, karma changed my life. You changed my life. I'm like, I never walked into your house. you live in South Africa. Like, you did that. You got rid of years of things. You did it so much so that your husband got inspired and he started getting rid of his things. That's all
Mhm.
you. I just kind of showed you a path to get there. So what's exciting about it is I think it's almost longer lasting when it all comes from you, versus like when I used to go into people's homes and do it for them. So
Good
yeah,
point.
it's pretty amazing.
That's a good point. And I'm thinking of examples as you're saying this, like, okay, well, how do I know where this or that goes? But I think your system does feel straightforward, because if I'm thinking to myself, well, do I need to keep a copy of this bill or whatever? Well, I probably don't need a record of that, and I probably could find it online. And so I'm thinking, maybe it
Yep.
is simple to think that through.
Yeah, yeah, and once you kind of look at it from a big picture perspective, because really, why are we doing this? Yeah, we want to be more productive and we want to get our things done, but we don't want to waste much time. Like, once you get it figured out, students are like, I'm saving 2 hours a week. I just, volunteered at my local animal shelter because I don't feel guilty that I should be at home getting organized, you know?
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, not only did I join a book club, I invited them over to my house because my house can, I can show people my house because I don't have piles of paper in the kitchen. I can actually do buffet, the kitchen counter. That kind of stuff is really, really telling because that's when the results really make a difference to our quality of life, right? Because
Absolutely.
sorting paper is not fun. I try to make it fun, but let's face it, people, right? This is, this is not fun, but if you do the work, then you can get to the fun.